Hello, I'm Professor Appleton, and once again I'm going to do a demonstration, this time a watercolor, painting this object, this pear. I don't know if you can see this, painting this pear. And to get started, I'm going to be working on a watercolor paper this time. And these are the watercolors I'm working with, very inexpensive watercolors, by the way. So, and for our purposes right now, we don't need to have expensive ones. However, if you want them to last, you want to get a little more valuable, more expensive watercolors than these. Okay, and these are the three brushes I have available. I'm going to use a flat tip, number 3 or 4 round tip, and about a number 2 round tip. Okay, for very small work. Okay, and to start off with, I'm going to go a little faster this time, and I'm going to go ahead and do clear water. Oops, got this already. Although also, by the way, you want to have a paper towel available in case you need to use it for something, even to just dry certain areas that you don't want to be wet. Okay. And again, we're going to do the pear first, and then the shadow, the cast shadow of the pear, will have to wait until after I'm finished. Okay, so to start with, I'm going to start with a lighter value, basically. I'm going to start with the yellow, the lighter light color. Okay, and I want to kind of keep this a little bit lighter in this area. So I'm going to clear that out a little touch, a little more in keeping with what it is on the original photograph, because there is some little bit of reflected white light on that pear. And now, by the way, I'm also using 3 crucibles of water. One is the dirtiest, one middle one is the least dirty, and the far one is completely clear water. Okay, and then I'm going to take some orange, and I'm going to work in this area. Okay. Yeah, this is similar in some ways to the pastels that we use in terms of color. When we start to do the shading on the pear, we don't want to use black. We want to be using, if we want to make it darker, we want to be adding complementary color to this, okay? And you can add a little bit of red to this as well. Also, you can do tests on there. So you can have you can mix a little bit on the palette if you have a palette with you. You can do a little mixing there first before you go and apply it to the water. And I'm taking a little bit of red, maybe a little bit too much orange stuck on there. And take some red, since I would like to have a little more red in here. Which is not too different than what we did with the pastel. Okay, and the same idea. Okay, remember we started out with clear water, okay, to begin with. Okay, now I'm going to go in with a complementary color. We kind of have red, so I might take some green and do a little bit of a test, perhaps. And also I'm going to work with orange as well in this, with blue as well, to create this dark shadow that we have on this. Okay. Darken in blue. And I'm going to come in with blue. You don't want to get too much, too blue and take over. You want to still want to keep it, the orange is the base for this. Okay. Okay, and then I'm going to come in a little bit more in this area, maybe with some of the orange. Not too much orange, but some into the yellow. And clear. Remember, we're trying not to create the hard edges to this, right? So you might take a little bit off of that edge right here. You see, when you do go up past where you want to go, it's going to be very tough to you have to incorporate that into your work. Yeah, okay. And we're kind of a little bit of, might a touch of orange in this area. This is not quite just yellow. It's got a kind of a gold quality to it. All right. And okay. And we could even come in, now that we've kind of used some of the complementary colors for this, use the green, kind of the reverse of complementary of red. Now, different than using the ink, watercolors are not permanent, so if you let this dry and then come back in and work on it some more, it may remove some of the watercolor that's there. So you want to be careful not to remove too much, or come in and work on it too much after it's dry and come back in to work on it. So you have to be careful not to end up removing what you've done before. But you could still come in and do some more darks and that kind of thing. Yes. Put a little bit, taking a little bit of, we actually have some brown here that I might add to this, just to give it a little stronger quality. And a little bit of green. Okay, so you can experiment and be kind of challenge yourself with this and be a little bit of experimental with it, especially with something where you have to do shading with complementary colors to it. Okay. Okay. Just a little bit of green, maybe, to give it a stronger right here. And as this shows, it's a little bit lighter right in here. Yeah, it's a strong kind of reddish orange right here across. Okay. Now we're going to come in with a cast shadow in a little bit, and okay. And you can see I'm using my paper towel an awful lot to dry and come back in and work on it some areas, and so you'll need to make sure you have your paper towel at the ready. And just a touch here, a little bit more, and just a little bit of dark right here, right in here. Another point to make on this is that you need to go very high saturation with the colors because they do have a tendency to dull a bit after they dry, when they dry. So make sure you've given it enough color so that it doesn't get too muted when it's dried out. You want to use pretty intense looking color when they're wet because it's going to look stronger and more saturated when it's wet than it will when it's dry. So keep that in mind, okay? Okay. Let me just clean that a little bit up. Okay. Just a touch less. Okay. All right. Now we can go on from here. And before I'm going to do the stem, and might as well use a small brush for this. The stem, as you can see, is very light, and it's kind of a yellowish, greenish. I don't know if you can actually see it, though. This is what it looks like. Okay, and the stem, I'm going to be doing that. Fairly, a little bit of brown to it, maybe. Get a fairly light value. Okay, and a little stronger. Okay, and we could go touch maybe a little green. Will that darken that a little more rather than adding black? If I, like I suggested, you could do that. And there's just a little. Now I can just add just a touch of brown in this area. And kind of blend that so it doesn't show up as such a hard edge to it. Okay, and as we did before, we can also put in the shadow that's created by this. Now the shadow I might actually dull and make it a gray kind of shadow coming from. Oh, it just flipped right out of my hand just now. So you do get errors sometimes happening, you know. You just have to be prepared for that. I'll get another piece of paper towel. Okay. Okay, I may hold off on doing that since that happened. Okay, now I'm going to, I may go ahead and put in the cast shadow just because we don't have time to wait for it to dry. And but I would recommend you not do this, that you wait until it dries and then put in your cast shadow, okay? And again, I'm putting in clear water here. You know, I'm afraid it's going to bleed into into the pear, so kind of doing something that I wouldn't normally do. Work wet to not wait until it dries, because it will bleed into the pear some, the darkest portion, the dark cast shadow. Now this cast shadow has a certain color to it. It has kind of a, I don't know if you can tell, but it has kind of a bluish and greenish with brown quality to it. So what I might do is come in first with the brown and lay it in pretty dark. Mm-hmm. And then I could come in with some, darks, maybe some very strong darks here, and purple maybe, mixed in with a little black perhaps. I'll add a little black in this case. Let's see, we have some purple. Since we're kind of doing an orange, it kind of makes sense in some ways. We could add in purple to our shadow here. Give it the complementary color of working with purple. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ah! A little bit too far over on that one. Just have to make it work. It's one thing if you make a mistake at the cast shadow, you can kind of cover up some of the mistakes if it goes too far over one way or the other. Yeah, I'm going to turn it up. I'm going to work a little bit better this way, be able to see what I'm doing. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now in watercolor you can tape off the edges if you like, you know, where it comes to the very end to the edges. So you can tape that off and prevent that from bleeding over, you know. Just be careful with the tape that it doesn't rip your paper when you pull it off afterwards, after you let it dry. All right, okay. So it's not bad. You can add a little, maybe some green, might even add to this a little bit. Put a little color in that area in the shadow. Rather than just brown and purple. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and put this shadow in place. All right, and then you can sign this. At this point, you can sign it right down here. And I could sign in. What should I sign in? I could sign. Might just sign in light brown or something like that. And this, of course, has a lot of little dots on it that are not necessarily what you want to show. And I'm going to do a little more in here. And small little dots are the kind of, a lot of them are very red. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show all these in red, but I will do a few, and then I'm going to turn off the film. I don't want to use quite so much space as I've done in the past. Okay, so it's going to be small little dots here and there all over this piece. Now I might want to come back and do a little stronger oranges in this area. It does seem to need that, even though it's pretty strong with it. But it still might want to come back in and do some stronger areas in this area here. And if that's the case, I could just come in maybe right now even and stronger areas with red and orange and create that effect. Okay. Now you can see what happens if I didn't get clear water or get some water in this area. I would end up creating a certain edge to this, and I don't really want to have an edge so much, and I'm going to get one anyway, I think, just the way it's going to dry. And I want to do maybe a little bit of green in this area. Now you can see how it starts to get muted as it dries. So you have to be kind of a little bit to over-saturate at the beginning. Make sure you've given enough color for that. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm. Okay. And I'll let this dry before I put on any of the dots, and otherwise they won't really show up very well. Okay, that's it for right now, and maybe I can edit this and come back to you. So goodbye for now, and I'll show you a finished product at a later time. However, I could show you this. Let me just turn it so you can see it up close and straight on. Okay. By the way, these are the other pieces that were created before, so you can get an idea. This is the first piece we looked at, with the charcoal piece. Okay, and then, I don't know if you can see it okay. And then we did the pastel And then we did the ink wash. And now the watercolor piece, okay? All right. Bye for now.